What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Guys, somebody commented and was like, hey, check out some Sweden history. So here I am. I picked the first video. The first video is an animated history channel, and we finna check this out because, hey, who doesn't like good animated stuff? This is part one. There may be a part two. I didn't see a part two, but there may be a part two. Well, we finna check this out. Check out some more history about Sweden. Y'all hit those comments. Y'all send me more recommendations. Hit that subscribe button. Let's check it out.
This video is made possible with the help of Dashlane. Download for free for 30 days and get 10% off with the code SWEDE, and never forget a password again. Deep in the valleys of rivers and lakes lay the lands of forest and frost, which the Northmen call Uppsala.
I feel like a story time already.
Lay the lands of forest and frost, which the Northmen call Uppsala. The sagas speak of Odin's family who ruled there as kings. They speak of Frey who built a great temple and ruled the land from his throne on the hill, of Fjolnir who drowned in a vat of mead while feasting in Sealand. The pages of the sagas then tell of Sviktir, who vowed to find Asgard, traveling far and wide for many years. In his travels he found in Svithowid a large stone embedded in the ground, with a dwarf at its entrance, luring him inside to Asgard. Sviktir entered the stone, bound by the charm of the dwarf, and was never seen again. In the quiet nights, the Northmen hear the scurry of elves which still cling to the undergrowth since the ancient days, and the trolls hiding in the forests and mountains. The Northmen fish and farm by day, and tell tales of heroes and monsters by night.
It's gonna be a pretty interesting series type thing. They look like they need to make this like a little series.
Scandinavia has been settled by Neolithic people for a very long time. But history as we know it really starts with the settlement of the area by the Indo-Europeans who produced the Nordic Bronze Age. With the collapse of the Roman Empire, many Germanic Scandinavians raided and settled further south in the vacuums of the old Roman provinces. The tribes that stayed developed the Proto-Nordic culture, an Iron Age society contemporary with the Great Migration period. The Proto-Norse society began mostly in the Straits of Kattegat before spreading further into Scandinavia, with an economy based on farming, fishing and trade. In the far north, the land was inhabited by a different ethnic group called the Sami, a Uralic people native to the Arctic region. But by far what we know most about prehistoric Sweden comes from the Viking Age. One theory for how it began was a sudden explosion in population, and this larger society started competing with each other for very limited farmland. Food became more scarce, and soon Scandinavians were importing a lot more food through trade. How did they pay for this food? With raiding, of course. So, with their expertise as warriors and sailors, they began a tradition of raiding coastal towns and villages in the Baltic Sea to fund their drastically imbalanced imports. This, however, was deeply rooted in culture and tradition, because for a Viking the greatest honor was to die in battle, with sword or axe in hand, so that Odin himself would take him up to his great hall in Valhalla. Swedish Vikings would raid and trade in lands as far away as Constantinople, where they were prized mercenaries.
If they're raiding, is it still considered trading?
Vikings would raid and trade in lands as far away as Constantinople, where they were prized mercenaries called varangians. Some Vikings from Russaland, called the Rus, would go on to found our modern concept of Russia by ruling over East Slavic tribes in Kievan, Novgorod. The raiders that returned to Sweden came back rich in gold, silver and slaves. Swedish Viking nobility tells of the legendary Yngling dynasty, said to trace its roots to Odin himself. But for many, the first leader recognized by most of the Icelandic sagas was Björn Ironside, son of legendary Danish warrior Ragnar Lothbrok. Ironside probably ruled what is today Uppland, but in Norse tradition, most of the power.
Okay, this giving me like Marvel, like Thor, and I'm definitely guessing Thor, Loki, Odin. All of them are Swedish. They're definitely Swedish.
Ironside probably ruled what is today Uppland, but in Norse tradition, most of the power laid with the Jarls, who collected taxes and enforced the law in their counties. By the early Middle Ages, Sweden was split between two rival powers, the Swedes and the Goths, who resisted more than a figurehead king for a lot longer than the Danes and the Norwegians. True unification would only come with Eric the Victorious, who introduced conscription, and Olaf Skjøtkonung, who adopted Christianity. Norse paganism would continue side by side with the new religion, until the former had mostly faded away by the 1300s, with Christian crucifixes slowly replacing Thor's hammer. The territories of Svealand and Gotaland seem to have been united officially by the rule of King Sverker I, but the newly united and newly Christianized kingdom was contested for rule by the House of Eric and the House of Sverker for the next century. In addition, Swedish kings fought wars with Denmark and Norway, whose realms and families were closely linked to their own. It is during this century too that the counties of Värmland, Jernbaraland, and Hälsingland became more closely tied to the Swedish kingdom, as well as areas settled in Finland called Österland. Swedish power in the eastern Baltic would only continue to increase.
I see they didn't go into detail more about like the difference with the Vikings from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, which I think there's a video too that kind of talks. I'm gonna have to check it out. What's the difference with the different type of Vikings and stuff
called
like that.
Österland. Swedish power in the eastern Baltic would only continue to increase, even launching crusades to unconverted Finnish tribes. The regent under the last king from the House of Eric was a man named Birger Jarl, who had his son ascend to the throne in an election in 1250. Birger Jarl founded the city of Stockholm by building a fortress on the old Viking settlement at the link between Lake Mälaren and the Baltic Sea. This would come to be Sweden's center of trade and government and eventual cultural capital. King Magnus Ladulus issued the Ordinance of Elsner in 1230, establishing a nobility and feudal levy, drastically increasing the small kingdom's power. They would go on to settle the Gulf of Bothnia and establish a fur trade monopoly with the Sami. When Magnus IV inherited the throne of Norway in 1319, he was elected the King of Sweden in the Convention of Oslo in the same year, making him king of both entities. But he was then kicked out by the nobles and replaced with Albert of Mecklenburg, and then he was in turn kicked out and replaced by Margaret of Denmark. By this point, Swedish nobles, fed up with the power struggles and eager to counter the trade monopoly of the Hanseatic League in the Baltic Sea, met in Kalmar to sign a joint personal union by which Margaret's nephew, Eric of Pomerania, was crowned king of all three domains, calling it the Kalmar Union. Although the union brought great riches and prestige to Scandinavia, it was controlled almost exclusively politically and economically by Denmark, the far more powerful of the three kingdoms, from their capitals at Roskilde and Copenhagen. A strong sense of regionalism developed around this time, with Swedish upper class viewing themselves as separate from Dano-Norwegians. A separatist party began to grow around a noble called Sten Sture the Younger, and during the coronation of Christian II of Denmark and Norway, the Swedish delegates refused him as king. Christian would then conquer Sweden by force, and after executing more than 100 nobles in Stockholm, sparked a rebellion. The rebels rallied around a noble called Gustav of the House of Vasa. The Swedish War of Liberation lasted just 2 years, with Gustav crushing the Dano-Norwegian troops and loyalists to Christian II. In 1523, he was crowned King of Sweden, and in the Treaty of Malmo, the Kalmar Union was split in two, the Kingdom of Denmark-Norway and the Kingdom of Sweden. Sweden was now a new kingdom with a brand new royal house, and circulating in this kingdom were new technologies and ideas of progressivism.
It's always interesting to see how things come about. I just, like, back then, it's just crazy how much and how many wars and stuff had to go on to, like, it's hard to really just think about that now, but like in the beginning, it's like, man, people really had to fight for territory. People really had to fight.
And circulating in this kingdom were new technologies and ideas of progressivism. The new printing press was spreading the romantic works of the Renaissance, as well as the works of Protestants in Germany. Change was in the air, and it was now clear that Sweden was on the cusp of a glorious new future. The middle class became obsessed with innovative ideas and provocative thought. An explosion of intellectual thought, with a university opening up in Uppsala. And innovation is something almost all of us can get behind, with new technologies and infrastructure dedicated to bringing us to an ever more interconnected world. But unfortunately, that means we live in the age of the password. And if you're like me and have an email inbox full of reset forgotten password links, then let Dashlane do the remembering for you. Dashlane is a company founded on preserving internet devices.
Okay, Dashlane, that was a good.
Your off a king, and
Loki,
we live in the online world.
Oh, that was it.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to vote on upcoming videos, please consider supporting at
That was good how they kind of was talking about everything. Then they were like, hey, if you forget. But no, man, I think that was pretty good. That was pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I feel like it could have been longer, you know, but that's what the part 2 is for. So definitely going to check out the part 2. Like I said, man, they didn't go into much detail about the Viking era, but which I always find interesting. But I'm telling you, like Thor, like they were saying some names. I'm like, this sound familiar. Thor is Swedish. Thor is Swedish. Loki is Swedish. Those Marvel characters, I'm very based on Swedish, very Swedish people. Very, very, yeah. But that was interesting. If you recommend some more Swedish history, make sure to send me a link so I can check that out. Like I said, I just picked the first video and it was this animated video. So y'all can tell me what you think, your thoughts in the comments. But that's all I have for this video. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hey, y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.